Welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm Mayor Diane Jones, your host, and we have Jack August with us today. An amazing person. I've known him for years. Bought his book about Carl Hayden many years ago and read that and enjoyed it so much, learned so much. Jack has written, he's the state historian for one thing, and he's written a multitude of books, papers, periodicals, magazines. He just is a prolific writer and covers the history of Arizona as an expert in water issues. But we'll let you kind of share a little bit about that. So I will call you Dr. August if you like.
That's fine, whatever you're comfortable with.
All right. And tell us a little bit about being the state historian and some of your other background.
Well, I pretty much come from the traditional academic background, university professor framework and the kind of publisher parish route. And what happened was recently, I think Secretary of State Reagan and Governor Ducey had been exposed to some of my books, and I was asked to dinner, and I thought I was going to be serving as a member of a search committee, but by the end of the dinner, there was no search committee. They had asked me to step into this position that had been created at the state capitol. And back in the day when Arizona became a state, 1912, through about the early 1920s, the state had a person called the state historian. One was Charlotte Hall for a little bit, another, well, there was a couple others, James Farish, and then they did away with it. So in a way, this is kind of a reprisal of a position in the state government. And part of my job description is to represent the state capitol, the old state capitol museum, which served as a seat of government, state government until the mid-1970s, until the executive tower was built. So my staff, myself, we're trying to kind of update and make the state Capitol Museum relevant to all of Arizonans. And thus, I come to Cottonwood. I'm looking forward to going to Wilcox, Kingman, Yuma, and kind of reintroducing this important symbol of what the state is.
Absolutely, because the history of the state is just, it's wonderful.
It really is.
We're just such a unique state. One of the last that was brought into the Union, and we just, I don't know, we're still sort of the gunslingers in some ways, it seems like.
Well, you're right. You know, and one thing we want to do is, yes, the Capitol Museum serves a lot of fourth graders. I think kids from throughout the state come and visit, and they get a little tour and visual aids of walking through the state's history. They learn about the war with Mexico of 1846-48 and how this area became part of the United States when previously it was part of Mexico, and before that, New Spain. They learn about jointure. Back in 1905, we almost came in, New Mexico and Arizona almost came in as one state instead of two separate states. It was going to be called the new state of Montezuma, with the capital at in Santa Fe, but the territory of Arizona voted against it. New Mexico voted for that, and that way, you know, President Roosevelt didn't want 4 new Democratic senators, and there was a political reason too. And it was obvious that New Mexico and Arizona, if they came in as separate states, would elect Democratic senators. And so jointure didn't work. We had to wait another 7 years, both New Mexico and Arizona, to become a state. So kids learn about that. They learn about some of our territorial leaders. There's a timeline, but we're revising that and updating some of those items at the Capitol. So it's really an exciting place. 45 minutes usually it takes to go through with one of our educators on a tour. And I urge everyone, not just fourth graders, but moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, come on down and take a tour. It's really a lot of fun.
So how long have you been doing this? Since about February?
February, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit out of what I thought I would do, but I thought about it.
You weren't expecting it, right?
No, and I have a wonderful staff. If they end up watching this, we're retooling that. We are bringing in some exhibits, one on Tombstone, which should happen in a couple of weeks. Some James Malikian, who's a landowner, and they own some buildings in Phoenix and downtown Tucson. but he's a collector, and he's now collected probably the premier collection of Tombstone memorabilia, old photographs, some of the earliest documents, and we're going to be showing those at the museum for a couple of months, and then we will rotate those exhibits in and out. So we're kind of trying to upgrade and make it a living
Make it
museum.
fresh.
Make it fresh.
Yeah, so there's something new to learn every time you go and come back and learn some more. So you're under the auspices of the Secretary of State, Michelle Reagan.
Yes.
And that's who you report to.
Yes, I think people don't understand that the Secretary of State, in many states it's called the Lieutenant Governor, but she's responsible not only for elections and certain business activities. That's one side of her job, but the other side are the museum, archives, and public records. And so we have all, by mandate, the governor's papers have to go there. So we have territorial governors, our first governor, Hunt, 7-time governor, on and off, and we had 2-year terms. And that stopped in 1974 when we started electing 4-year term governors. We have Governor Osborne, some that people don't know, Governor Phillips, who was only a 1-term, 1929 to 31. But all of them, their papers are there for researchers, attorneys use them, and so it's a very lively, robust archive in the Polly Rosenbaum Museum, pardon me, the Polly Rosenbaum building, which was christened, I think, in 2009. I may be wrong, but right around there. It's a new state-of-the-art archives, and we should be proud of it. And again, it's the public's
information.
Yes.
Do you know Jerry Emmett?
Yes, I know Jerry over in Prescott. She's a living legend,
102 years old.
Yes, she's a delight.
And I guess she knew Governor Hunt.
She knew Governor Hunt, and I know.
And he was our very first governor.
Yes, and you know what? Both Jerry Emmett and he was the president of the Constitutional Convention.
Okay.
A real good. He was a camp mining waiter. Came from Missouri. Was in the mining town of Globe for a long time, and that was then a powerhouse. You had the mining communities were basically the economic engines of the state at the time of statehood. And he had a great memory and could remember everyone's name. One guy came up to him once and said, "Hey, can't you give me a job?" And he looked in his note card and said, "You didn't even vote for me." The state was a little smaller back then. Also, both back to Jerry Emmett, who's a lovely lady, 102 years old at Prescott, and Betty Ruffner, her junior. But they both knew Governor Hunt, and both of them said they were surprised that he ate his peas with a knife. They both said it separately.
They verified each other, their account of him
yes.
eating your peas with a knife. That's great. Well, I want to share a little bit of more information about you. You're a scholar in residence at the Southwest Center for History and Public Policy.
Yes.
That's an Arizona nonprofit think tank. You're a former Fulbright Scholar, National Endowment for the Humanities Research Fellow, winner of the Border Regional Library Association's Southwest Book Award for Literacy Excellence, and Pulitzer Prize nominee in the History category.
Yes.
You're the author of numerous books on the history of the New American West. You have taught at the University of Houston, University of Northern British Columbia, and Northern Arizona University, among others, where your courses focused on the American West and environmental history. So when you send all of your accomplishments, it's like 17 pages. And this was like the smaller amount of information, but we're actually going to have 2 episodes of your information because there's just so much.
Wow.
There's more than we could possibly cover in a half an hour. So we're going to talk a little bit, so we're going to just divide up the information between 2 television episodes. But let's just talk about, we talked a little bit about the museum and the visitors, so a lot of 4th graders.
Yeah.
But you're just looking at every age group that you're inviting and want to be there. And you're expanding, or you expanded the Capitol Museum store, and you opened a coffee shop. And how does that change things?
Well, it would surprise the public at how you could come up with an idea. We're going to make the museum store larger and a coffee shop, but it needs to go through a variety of bureaucratic channels. specifically something called the Legislative Council. And
Okay.
they kind of run the show in the buildings. And so it took the Capitol Museum administrator who works with me, Dory Hansen, about a year to get the permissions. And so what's exciting, let's start with the cafe. If you're at the Capitol, there's the Senate and the House, and it's a long way to get to a cafeteria or a coffee shop or anything like that. So
Right,
now
it's in the basement,
it's
right?
in the basement, but you know what? This is going to be on the first floor. And you enter the Capitol Museum, you turn to the right, and there's going to be a nice coffee shop. So
Great.
people in the House or people in the Senate can quickly go there. There's a lot of state workers, many state workers in both the old Capitol, the 1901 structure, then there was a 1919 edition, and then there's a 1938 edition during the New Deal to put people to work, and they expanded the old Capitol. That's the image that you see whenever they show state government.
Right. And I love the Capitol. Every time I go down there quite frequently, I'm on the Governor's Council on Aging, and it's just the most beautiful building. I just go there, and I'm in awe of it every time I go. And that's where your museum is. It's in the actual older the real Capitol.
The real Capitol, and yeah, we have the old Senate, and then we have the old House, all the old judicial chambers, and in fact, in the 1938 edition, where our suite of offices are located, I have the coolest office in the Capitol.
You do? You
have
have someone's desk.
I have Bruce Babbitt's desk
Yes.
when he was both Attorney General and Governor, and I am located in the Chief Justice's chambers of the old Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was in there from 1934 till 1938 to 1974. That's correct. And then it moved down to Washington, down the street to Washington, but on Washington Street. But I have this wonderful office, and we also have we have some wonderful artwork, McGargy's, David Swing's, and we have some 8,500 three-dimensional objects in our collections, and we're going to be rotating them out. And in fact, I even have a David Swing in my office now. So we are extending the museum into our offices, and we are part of the museum, and that's been fun, and I think the staff appreciates it, and certainly I do. And we're also, to update you on a few things, we're going to be showing and rotating Arizona artists, their contemporary artwork, and maybe that's a little outside the old mission of what the museum does, but we think to make it more relevant, and so we're looking for Native American artists, regional artists, realists, photographers, but we hope to rotate those kinds of things in and introduce people to the public. And
so how would someone who's an artist apply to be featured?
You know what? Get in touch with me. My email is jaugust@azlibrary.gov.
All right, and with that, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Great.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Alvin and the Chipmunks want to remind you, bacteria can hide in food and make you ill.
Wow.
But you can keep bacteria from ruining your day with 4 simple steps. Clean.
I'm waiting for the rinse cycle.
Separate. Cook.
Fire in the hole!
And chill.
We chipmunks are notoriously tight.
Check your steps. The road trip to food safety starts at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm Mayor Diane Jones, your host, with Jack August, who is a writer, and he's also the state historian. Let's talk a little bit now about the museum store.
Yes, we talked the last segment about the new coffee shop. It's in the process. We hope open in a couple months. But the museum store, we've expanded it further down the north side of the first floor of the Capitol Museum. And one of the innovations, and I'm really glad we got some support from the administration, is to secure a liquor license that enables us to sell beer and wine at the Capitol Museum store. And of course, we want to feature Arizona wines, and I noticed that Cottonwood has rebranded itself as the
Heart of Arizona wine country.
The heart of Arizona wine country. I can't agree more. And that's, I think, a very wise move. I love coming over here and going to the tasting rooms, and we want to feature Cottonwood area wines. We now know there's a new initiative up in Kingman, Mojave County of all places, and of course down in southern Arizona around Wilcox and Sedona and
yes.
those areas. And we're going to try to feature some of the wines from Cochise County.
Cochise, actually, a lot of the vines are grown in Cochise, Arizona.
That's right.
Which is close to Wilcox.
That's exactly right. So we want to not only educate the public about that and feature not only wines, but we're going to have some beers for sale as well. But we want to bring the people that are the growers and the producers and the purveyors of these products to the Capitol and maybe educate us a little bit. And so, for example, we have, it's well known that Cottonwood is a place where the musician Maynard Keenan is, and he
actually Jerome.
He lives in Jerome. He lives in Jerome now, but he 4 miles away.
He works all over the Verde Valley.
The Verde Valley,
right.
And it would be really great if he came down and introduced his wines and his whole what his organization is doing up here. I think he's a positive influence in the area, and it's not just Cottonwood, but the state. I think the state's proud of what he's doing and happy to do it. So,
absolutely,
as an open invitation to Maynard to come on down to the Capitol.
All right. Well,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll make sure he gets that invitation.
All right. Thanks.
And we have just so many other grape growers and winemakers, and
they're all welcome.
And yes, we just can send you lots of folks. But special musician, and we all love Maynard Keenan, and we're very proud that he's part of our community, and he really does a lot for the community.
As I'm learning about.
He puts a lot of investment into the community, as do the other grape growers and winemakers. It's all good. So you're just trying to bring some focus to the rural areas of the state, and
yes.
I love that. You know? I love rural Arizona is special.
It really is, and I happen to live in Prescott, and we have some similarities, but some differences with this side of the Mingus Mountains. But there's a special kind of small town character that I think we share both in Prescott and Cottonwood, but elsewhere, Show Low, Pine Top. We'd like to bring those areas in. The capital is not just the capital of Maricopa County.
That's
it's
correct.
the capital of all the states.
Thank you.
And a place as dynamic as Yuma, for example. I don't think we don't. When you're in Prescott or in Phoenix, you don't think of Yuma, but that's a dynamic, highly populated agricultural empire.
Absolutely.
And we need to
Feeds
bring them
the whole United States with lettuce
Yeah.
in the winters, and it just is an amazing place.
It really is. And so, and it does recall a part of our agricultural past, our irrigated agricultural past, which is a big part of our history, like the mines were, and perhaps will be. Well, we'll see. That's now a political discussion.
Right.
And we now have a big service economy, and you have created almost a new economy here in the Verde Valley with the wine and tourism. And with those wines, and they're good wines, you have, I think, a very robust restaurant business and industry that's developing around that. I don't know what came first, whether it was the restaurants or the wines, but they're mutually reinforcing, and it's really great to be here and enjoy some of the things that you can eat and drink.
And we also have Yavapai College, is the Southwest Wine Center, which is an amazing endeavor that's successful.
Yes.
And will be what they will learn from what they're doing, along with the city of Cottonwood. We collaborated with them to bring reclaimed water to them so they don't have to pump groundwater.
That's great.
And so just all of these things will be educational, and I think they'll be a model for the globe. The documentation that the college will be doing on growing grapes and making wine.
I've heard that's a really great program. I'm looking forward to going out there. I'm also aware that Helen Stevenson in the film that Yavapai College, I went to Yavapai Film Festival in Prescott. It was the Prescott Film Festival. And my goodness, you know, this is really a program that's gaining traction and taking off. So there's a lot of creativity going on
The
with Yavapai
arts
Carving.
and right, the wine and that culture just brings the arts right into focus, and so it's just amazing what's happening in Sedona and the Verde Valley, and it's just I can't be prouder
Yes.
of our community.
Really.
It's already time for another break. It goes
Okay.
fast.
It does.
All right,
Thanks.
we'll be right back.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track.
Oh, hey. She's cute. Nice going, man.
Things are going great for you.
You've earned a night out.
Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car?
Uh-oh.
Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm Mayor Diane Jones, your host, with Dr. Jack August today, talking about the Capitol Museum.
Right.
And we were talking just now, you can also purchase books there.
Right.
So just lots of exciting things
Yeah.
that,
Great Arizona titles. We recently got a new book a new biography on Governor George W.P. Hunt, seven-time governor, really kind of the grandfather of the state of Arizona in a way. And very controversial but a dominant force from, say, 1912 until the first 2 decades. He was governor 7 different times. Lost a couple of elections to Thomas Campbell, our first Republican governor. And the thing is, it's kind of hard to believe we're sitting here in conservative Yavapai County, which I think has a 2-to-1 registration of Republicans to Democrats. But 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, we became a state. We were a rather liberal, progressive state, to use some loaded words. But Governor Hunt was one of those progressives. And in fact, when we look at the election of 1912, when we first voted in a presidential election, the incumbent president was a guy named William Howard Taft, very conservative Republican. His mentor thought that he was messing up, so he came back to run for president again. That was Theodore Roosevelt. He ran as the Progressive Republican, or the Bull Moose Party. Another candidate for governor for president at the time was Eugene V. Debs, the socialist. There was a prohibitionist candidate as well. And then there was the Democratic candidate, Woodrow Wilson. And I think people would find it surprising, and you can learn about this at the Capitol Museum as well, that when the final canvass for president was rendered, Woodrow Wilson won Arizona. Theodore Roosevelt finished second. The socialist Eugene V. Debs finished third. And the incumbent president, the conservative Republican William Howard Taft, finished fourth.
amazing.
That's amazing, and it's hard to believe that Arizona was like that. And today we have a very different kind of political patina to us.
Right, and we were going to talk about elections.
Yes.
Then and now, and kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, very interesting. Yeah. I was on another radio program down in Phoenix recently, and we were talking about the rise of Donald Trump, and the host tried to link it to Joseph McCarthy in the 50s, and I think that's a little maybe overheated rhetoric, but we have a third party. We're talking about the need for a third party, and we've had strong runs. I think in 1968, we had George Wallace, who won some states in that election.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild election,
Right,
1968,
right.
which Nixon won, and Hubert Humphrey didn't finish. But in some ways, can you compare Barry Goldwater's rise as an anti-establishment Republican in 1964 and the establishment Republican Rockefeller, and Barry in Arizona took the Republican Party to a different place. Now, Donald Trump is the anti-establishment Republican candidate. I think that's where the parallels, the similarities stop there.
Right.
But you know, Donald Trump is a unique figure. I don't know if we've seen anything quite like it in our political history. And we'll see if the third party, we've occasionally had third parties rise, like the populists, for example, at the end of the 19th century. But what happens? By 1900, the Republicans and the Democrats have co-opted their positions into the larger party platforms. We've done that quite a bit. Is it time for another third party now that we're visiting such uncharted waters? I really don't know, and we'll see how well Mr. Johnson does, the libertarian, the former governor of New Mexico does. So I just find it pretty fascinating to watch. If you can step away and not get emotional and analyze it.
Right.
I think it's similar in some ways, but unique in other ways. And so, and here we go, the last final sprint. We'll see what happens. So.
I mean, like a third party, independents are no parties.
Yeah.
You know, but they've actually kind of overtaken both parties. They have more voters, more registered voters as independents and no parties now than Republicans or Democrats in our state.
Yes, you're right, and they're going to swing the election. I think the U.S. Senate race between Senator McCain and Representative Kirkpatrick, that may be close. And depending on how things break and the Donald Trump effect in Arizona, we'll see. I think if I were to guess, I would think that the independent voters probably lean a bit to the right rather than to the left in Arizona. And I think in New Mexico it would be the opposite. So again, there's some really interesting dynamics. The primaries produced a few surprises, and we'll see, but I think we may be on the verge of what happened to the Whigs in the 1850s, where a guy came in from out of nowhere, Zachary Taylor, the last Whig president, and he wasn't really anything, but his presidency, he didn't really stand for much other than he was popular and was a hero of the Mexican War, and that basically fractured the Whig Party, and we have, out of that chaos, the Republican Party was created of Lincoln, but that party resembles very little the Republican Party of today.
And then we had kind of the Tea Party just in the past 5 years, I guess.
Yes.
And that, you know, that kind of fractured the Republican Party, and so it's amazing the history that you know. So if our state started out Democratic, which is what I understand, at what time did it change to Republican? And
I think there's a couple of signposts to that. One was the gubernatorial election of 1950, in which Howard Pyle beat Anna Frohmiller. She was then I think Secretary of State, the Democrat, and he won, and that was on the heels of some reforms in city government in Phoenix, and Barry Goldwater became a city councilman, and by 1952 he pulls an upset over the incumbent and Senate Majority Leader Ernest McFarland, who was a great senator and a great governor, and former county attorney, Pinal County attorney, and later became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In fact, I'm in his old office. And so right in there, the 1950 to 52, you have the rise of what I call the era of Republican hegemony, political hegemony. And it's certainly solidified by 1970. You see it in the registration. There were still more Democrats, but they were called Pinto Democrats because in order to have any vote, you had to register as a Democrat up to, say, the 50s and the 60s. And then you could vote. You're basically voting for Republican.
Which happens nowadays. I mean, you know, there were 3 races in District 3 of Yavapai County that were going to be determined in the Republican primary.
Yeah,
so Democrats didn't get to vote at all for those offices.
Yeah, that's really true. And You just reminded me of one of the great Arizona characters, Eddie Basha, and who would change his registration to vote for Goldwater in the primary, or then he'd re-register as a Democrat. He was the Democratic nominee for governor in 1994, I believe, or I may have that or 98. No, that was Paul Johnson in 98. But he would change just because it was he voted for the person instead of the party, you know, it shows the kind of conundrum we have in some of our counties. If you go to Tucson or Flagstaff, it's a very different political culture than, say, here in Yavapai County.
Absolutely,
and,
absolutely.
I have to say, vive la différence. That's good.
That's right, that's good. Do you know we're already out of time
Okay.
for this episode? It's been great visiting with you.
Fun.
And we're going to have you back again. We're going to actually do 2 episodes this month.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about all of the books that you have written. And I'm excited for the next episode to talk about those things. So for today, we'll wrap it up. And that's the way it is in Cottonwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.